Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Joint Town Hall. My name is Lance Kershner, school principal, and middle school high school principal. And as we work through our program today, we also have some teachers joining us, and they'll actually be our main focus today as we talk about the importance of synergy across the grade levels. If you attended our previous town hall, we talked about synergy across this are really direct from our grade 4 middle school, our middle school teachers for English, math, and science, so that you have a much better idea of what that synergy across grade levels and from division to division looks like. So I'd like to just welcome you once more, and I will turn it over to Mr. Harding, who's going to open us in prayer, and then we'll get started with our program from there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kershner. Welcome, everyone. Please join me in a moment of prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, we're just so thankful, Lord, that we get to work at your school, Lord, that we get to be an integral part of transforming the lives of these students, to be part of this community and to be able to work with such wonderful teachers and such devoted parents. Lord, we thank you for the community that you have built here. Lord, we thank you for the school that you have placed here and for all the people that you have brought onto our campus. Lord, we look forward to the day when we can have these sorts of meetings face-to-face and hybrid, Lord. We can't wait to see our community thrive once again. Lord, we thank you for your protection over these past 2 years. We thank you for providing students and parents and teachers and ways to get people into the country. Lord, we just thank you so much for every opportunity that you've provided for us. Lord, bless this town hall this morning. May the presenters, Lord, glorify you in how they articulate to this group the wonderful things that are happening in these subjects. Lord, we lift all of this up to you. May it glorify and honor you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Well, thank you very much, everybody, once again for joining. As Mr. Kershner mentioned, my name is Darryl Harding, the middle school and high school principal. And today we're going to be talking about synergy. If you will recall, if I could go to slide 3, please. If you could, we would recall, we talked a lot about synergy last December in Principals Town Hall, a joint Principals Town Hall. And the focus there was really about more or less how the divisions themselves provide synergy that leads to quality education. And we shared with everybody the results, and we'll share those again just as a reminder for all of you. But today the focus is really on what is happening in the classroom, specifically what is happening in the science classroom, the math classroom, and our ELA classroom. These are 3 incredibly important subjects, I know, for you and for colleges and university. And so we wanted to highlight how the curriculum that is designed here at ICS leads to success in further grades as your children transition from grades 4 to 5 and 5 into our middle school. I will turn it over to Mr. Kershner, who will share with you some very special individuals who are joining us today for this town hall. Mr. Kershner, would you please introduce slide 4, our teachers who are joining us today?
Absolutely. We are so happy to have joining us today our grade 4 and grade 5 homeroom teachers, Mrs. Angel Garrett, Miss Shannon Bandy, Mr. Rob Albright, and Mr. Elmer Dizon. And then in our middle school, representing our English, math, and science departments in middle school, we have Mr. Jean-Loup Francois, Mrs. Jet Huang, and Mrs. Olivia Tweet. So we're very excited to hear from them later on in our presentation today. Now, as Mr. Harding mentioned, we would like to just share some of the results that this synergy across grade levels and across divisions can bring. So we shared these in our last Principals Town Hall, but we'd like to highlight them again today. And these are our map results from our recent map testing for fall of 2021. So this testing happened just this past November. So these are quite recent results. Now, internally, we do use our map results within, as part of this synergy that we're talking about, we use these results to really identify areas where students might still be struggling, or where students might need additional challenge to make instructional decisions in the classroom, so that we can continue to push our students forward and help them to grow in their learning. But it's also great to celebrate across a division what those results look like, because it gives us a good comparison of how we are doing in comparison with other schools on the island, as well as other schools across the world. And so I'd like to highlight that in the elementary school, in all of our subjects that were tested, math, reading, language, and science, we had very, very strong results. These are the percentages of our students across the entire elementary school in K-5 up to grade 5 that scored at the high average or at the top high percentile range. So in math, over 91% of our students scored at the high average or the highest percentile range for math. In reading, 89%, over 89%. Again, in language usage, which this begins starting in grade 2, where we begin testing the language. Math and reading are tested in all grade levels from K-5 and up. Beginning in grade 2, we test language skills as well. Again, over 91% of our elementary students from grades 2 to 5 tested at the high average or high percentile range. And then this was the first year we actually tested science. So we began this in grade 3, so grades 3 and up, we tested science. And even though this was the first time these students had ever taken any type of standardized test in science, over 80% of our students from grades 3 to 5 scored at the high average or the high percentile range. So we're very excited about these results that happen when we have this synergy across the school. Now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Harding so he can share some similar exciting map results from middle school and high school.
Exciting indeed. Thank you, Mr. Kershner. The excellence doesn't end in the elementary school. As you can see here in the middle school, we're scoring 89% at the high average, to high percentile range. Reading is at almost 88%, almost 96% for language, and 89% for science, in which Mr. Kershner mentioned. This is the first time we've actually tested science with our map results. Going into high school, 95% in the high average to high percentile range, 80% in reading, and almost 92% in language. And I think this is a real testament to the excellence in teaching and learning that's happening, not only in the middle and high school, but the foundations that are being set by our grades 4 and 5 teachers, especially in the elementary, but all the way back to K4 and K5. This speaks to the synergy that exists in our curriculum and in our teaching and learning that goes well beyond the academic office that Mr. Kershner and I find ourselves in. And speaking of that synergy and our excellent teachers, I would like to now introduce our reading and writing team, so our ELA team. And we'll start out with grade 4 English. So grade 4 English, we turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Darryl. It's a privilege to be able to share what's going on in our classrooms. And in the subject of reading, I wanted to focus on these 3 areas because it's been something that's grown, especially over the past 2 years. And so to start with literature circles, we've been using this program called Reading A to Z, and this is one of the main focuses. And we really enjoy it because it allows students to not only focus on different skills as they read, but it also brings together collaboration. And so what we have with our literature circles is, as you can see on the left side, we'll put different students together, usually according to reading levels, and they'll read through the text together, and then they'll go away with certain things that they want to focus on. And it just creates a holistic approach to looking at the text in different ways. For individualized reading apps, these are great because it allows us to get specific data on subject areas that students are doing well in and areas for improvement, and that just drives our instruction further. And so we've used Mosaic, also known as ScoopPad. We use a lot of RAS Plus, which is an extension of Reading A to Z, and also Get Epic is another form of software that we use that just gives students different subjects and reading materials. And finally, we emphasize weekly reading logs, and this is a chance for students to read books that interest them on a personal level, but at the same time, it's active reading. And as they're reading, they're summarizing, they're looking at different characters and how they're developing throughout the story. And so with these three elements, we really are able to target different skills as well as be able to take the data and guide further instruction with it. So, thank you.
I'll just continue with fifth grade reading. Everything that Rob is doing with individualized instruction using some of those software. At fifth grade, we do so too. And we continue to build students' reading skills through our reading curriculum. My favorite aspect of the reading curriculum includes reading centers where students get to receive small group reading instruction through guided reading, review language use skills, and project centers to build their collaborative, communicative, and creative skills. We also develop students' critical thinking and communication by the selection of age-appropriate, award-winning Newbery Honor Medal books, besides equipping students with skills on how to select books at their reading level. We also use their reading benchmark tests and reading scores to recommend suitable books.
All right, and then in middle school, we continue all those skills. We examine a wide range of text types, especially with our new curriculum. We have news articles, we have blogs, short stories, poetry, a really wide range. And we do 2 novel studies each year for each grade level. So you can see all of the books represented in this slide. Most notably, A Wrinkle in Time for 6th grade, The Hobbit for 7th grade, and at the end of 8th grade, we examined To Kill a Mockingbird, which is really advanced. Students use the skills they've learned in 5th grade to prepare for Socratic seminars. So they discuss their texts in very formal student-led settings. They're expected to clarify confusion, share vocabulary, build connections, make predictions, share opinions, ask questions, and examine how authors convey various themes. All of this while developing basic adult discussion skills like behaving maturely, actively listening to each other, and communicating effectively in small groups. Students also continue to read widely and extensively when they select books at an appropriate level for themselves to read independently. They do a lot with these and then create a cumulative book report presentation to practice public speaking skills as well.
I believe we're moving to grade 4 writing.
Thank you. For writing, as we make the jump from 3rd to 4th grade, one of the key focuses is on informational essays, and we do have narrative essays and persuasive essays. But the reason we focus here is because it's where students take that step into diving into research and learning how to find relevant information and how to cite those materials. And so I just have photos here of a basic breakdown of what a writing unit may look like, where they'll go through and choose the topic they're going to research. And once they have their sources, they'll also follow that up with certain glossary terms, just to get the idea that for someone that may not be familiar with that topic, how you can teach those certain things for the content-specific vocabulary. And then after they write their final piece, there's plenty of conferencing with other students and me. And this actually happens throughout the writing process, just so students can give each other feedback. And we find that that's a huge way students are able to learn in terms of how to edit their papers and give certain things that other students can work on. And you can take it from there, Angel.
All right, so in 5th grade, we actually continue all those skills that they learned in 4th grade. We do focus on narrative and opinion papers, but we also focus in on informative pieces as well. So what we do in 5th grade is after they have done their research, we first get them to think of questions. So this year they start to think of questions that they can research to help the research go a little more deep. And then once they have researched, we then try to get them to take that research and be more descriptive and elaborate in their writing. So you see here are just some little snippets from some of the kids' papers where they took that information, the research, and was more detailed with the writing. I'll just read one to you. It says, a toy sparked their imagination. When the Wright brothers were little, their father got them a gift. He spun it into the air while the brothers scrambled to catch it. But instead of falling, it flew gracefully into the air. The toy their father gifted them was a spinning top of Chinese origin, but was remodeled by an inventor called Alphonse Pinot. And though it was small and was a toy designed for children, it was a powerful flying machine. Next thing you know, they were playing with the fragile toy until it broke. As a result, they tried to make a bigger, better version of the flying spinning top, and they soon realized that a bigger one didn't fly farther, but it barely flew at all. And they soon lost interest and eventually moved on. But that tiny gift sparked a love for aviation inside their hearts. So you see, they were able to take the research that they did and put it into a story form and expand on it, get more detailed, and really paint the picture to the reader about that toy.
All right. In middle school, with writing skills, we especially emphasize and practice varying our sentence structure even more. We add positive phrases, introductory clauses, concise word choice. But also when students answer various prompts, they follow a very specific structure that's built off of the foundation that 5th grade laid. So to answer any question, students will state their claim, their answer. They'll support it with evidence, textual evidence, so research they've done, quotes from texts we've studied in class, and then they follow their support, that research, with commentary, the explanation, the deeper reasoning, the persuasive arguments that they want to use. So this helps ensure that their arguments are supported and that they intentionally balance their own thoughts with textual support. So using the research wisely, but also including their own deeper thinking. So you can see above, this is a 6th grade response to just a question about a character in a novel. So it follows that structure. First sentence is the answer to the question. They introduce a quote, and then they have some deep thinking afterwards. The 8th grade example is from an essay on a Holocaust topic. So you can see the underlined commentary is a lot more persuasive deep thinking there. So through all this, also students practice citing their sources with in-text citations, punctuating quotes correctly, even modifying the quotes with brackets and ellipses, as you can see above. So this structure is the framework for all of their essays and arguments and short answer responses throughout middle school and even into high school. It prepares them well for that. Toward the end of the year, students conduct a research paper that's a little more lengthy, where they further apply these skills to answer questions of current day significance. And they learn how to format and cite sources according to current MLA guidelines. So that's middle school. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. That was fantastic and really helps us to see how the foundation that is built in one grade level then helps the student to progress and be successful in subsequent grade levels, and then even across divisions moving into middle school from elementary school. We'd like to continue this conversation now as I turn it back over to our math team. So we'll start with grade 4 math.
Hi, good morning, everyone. As students move on from 3rd grade to 4th grade, the math concepts and skills they learn become more and more complex, dealing with more fractions and decimals. So it's really key for us teachers to make sure that even though the skills are more challenging, we have to keep it as exciting and as concrete and as visual as possible. And one of the most exciting things we do in class is the virtual escape room in math. So we do this after a unit to serve as a review or reinforcement. And in fact, some of my students yesterday asked me at the beginning of a unit, Mr. Dizon, when's our next escape room? I miss it. I want to go to an escape room again. So it just shows how excited they are to, and they're very competitive, I tell you. They love solving these math puzzles virtually and also on paper. But aside from the excitement it brings, we make sure as math teachers to make the concepts as difficult as they are to still be concrete, to still be visual. So as you can see on the screen, we still use number lines, fraction tiles, and make the connections for equivalent fractions and going on to decimals, because these are really foundational skills as they go up to 5th grade and middle school or even high school or even university level. So yeah, it's really fun teaching math to these kids who are so excited and great problem solvers and critical thinkers in 4th grade.
Curriculum spirals and increases in difficulty over the grades, and foundational topics like operations and algebraic thinking, number and operations, measurement and data, geometry are repeated across elementary school as well. So at 5th grade, an important activity we do with decimals is having students get a solid foundation on the place values from 100 to millions and decimals to hundreds. For fractions, we use fraction strips as well, and we draw models when adding and subtracting fractions with mixed numbers. Here are some examples of activities we do to help students grasp important concepts in fractions and decimals. The students come up with their own questions to create decimal board games, and they are engaged, they have lots of fun, they get to be creative and work together with their peers, and yet get lots of practice in solving problems. Before they know it, they're finishing 30, 50 questions at a time with these board games. And in area models, number line and fraction strips, they're used in the learning process to help them develop concepts visually before we move on to abstract numbers. At the beginning of fractions, we also review equivalent fractions, which students have learned in 4th grade to deepen their learning and to close any gaps to be ready for middle school.
Good morning, everyone. So for middle school math, okay, here's my slide. Right. So, you know, I like how Mr. Dyson mentioned we still use number line in 4th grade, and that is important to put the focus on still here, because there's that preconceived idea that those models are only for early elementary, and then it gets dropped because the kids don't need those models. But in fact, even in middle school, we do use that because we have options. We either ignore what they do in elementary and we start afresh, and it's a tough move for them from elementary to middle school, or we acknowledge, or we can go further, acknowledge what they do and use it in middle school. And that's what we try to do. That's why we want to have manipulatives as part of what we do, even though it's a rigorous program and we need to cover things, and we know why we're covering those things, because we also need to align with high school because it's a longer continuum. But we try to use those models that have been used very effectively in elementary as much as possible. Mrs. Garrett just mentioned number line. Again, that's one thing that we use a lot, because number lines in many different areas of math will come over and over again. Yesterday, I was doing the coordinate plane and how it connects to the number line. So in all those things, we want to make sure that they don't see this thing happening right now, but like Mr. Harding mentioned the word synergy at the beginning, but it all connects to each other. So we want to see that continuity. We see in the middle, there's an example of a visual model, because we do know that most of those kids learn math much better when there's something to see, to look at, and to compare with something else, and not just write and solve. On the right side, I also wanted to put an example of how, regardless of what we do, even though what we do is important, it's important to note that the standards themselves, they do go along in a very thought of progression. If here, for example, we look at how fractions is described in 5th grade in one of the standard, it's mentioned how fraction, so fractions by non-zero whole, operations with fractions by non-zero whole numbers and division of whole numbers. So it's fractions with whole numbers, and then we move to middle school math, where now we talk about the same fractions in a similar language, but we just add an extra level to it, where we need to do operations with those fractions, but by other fractions. So what I want to show by this is that we do acknowledge what's happening in elementary, use it in middle school, but also the standards are set in a way to allow that progression to be done smoothly and to, at the end of the day, bring them ready for high school as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dizon, Ms. Garrett, and Mr. Francois for letting us see how math connects across the elementary and middle school. I have a parent in elementary in 5th grade who was in 4th grade last year here, and one that just finished 6th and is in 7th. And I can tell you from a parent's perspective, watching my child, the growth and the connections is there. And if you really want to find out how challenging and rigorous math is here, just ask one of my 2 kids. I love listening to them chat with their friends from the schools they came from, and telling them that math is so much more challenging here. But the teachers are so much more helpful at bridging the gaps that may exist for new parents and new families coming in, and also just challenging them appropriately. So we do appreciate the connections and the way math is done here. Moving on to our science curriculum. As we mentioned, science was something that we tested or assessed in MAP this year for the very first time. We wanted to see how we were doing. Data is very important to us. And as if you recall, it showed that we were doing quite well. And so I would like to introduce our science department, our science teachers, to come in and share with you how science connects across the curriculum in grades 4, 5, and in the middle school.
Okay, so for 4th grade science, this is one of the first or the earliest units this school year. It's all about energy. So it's about how energy is converted from one form to another, and how energy is transformed from one place to another through sound, light, heat, and electricity. So we focus a lot on electricity. So one of the most exciting activities we did early in the school year was I gave them a battery, a short piece of wire, and a small light bulb. And then I just told them, make the light bulb light up. That's it. And the kids would say, Mr. Dizon, what would I do? What do I do? That's it. You figure it out on your own. And you can really see the excitement and the problem solving minds that they have. If I don't give them a lot of things to follow, they will figure things out on their own. And that's where learning really comes out. When they investigate, they try something, it doesn't work, how do I adjust? And that's actually a good opportunity for me to also teach them growth mindset and not giving up even if something doesn't work. And the rigor is there. It's just so exciting to see them literally light up with their light bulbs, but also their minds lighting up. And this is just one big unit of electricity and energy. And the students love it, and they remember it even after 1 year, and they still talk about it, how they made the light bulbs light up. It's just amazing to see how students can make their own connections if you just let them figure things out on their own and investigate. And what we do as teachers is facilitate the learning and just process what did you learn, what worked, what didn't work. And from there, real learning comes out from the students themselves. And that's something that's continued through the years in 5th grade and onwards.
So in 5th grade, then they learn how energy travels through an ecosystem. So they begin by making their own terrarium. And then throughout the rest of the 2nd semester, they will make observations to see what's going inside the terrarium, what processes are happening in the terrarium, and they make all those observations. And then they start to study what does a plant need to survive. And so they do an experiment where one group will get everything for the plant, another group takes water away, another group takes carbon dioxide away, another group takes soil away, and then one group takes sunlight away. And then they make those observations to see how the plants are surviving. And then they'll move on and learn that food chains and the food webs and the energy pyramids that are happening through the ecosystem is all depending upon the sun, how the sun is that source of energy. And so throughout the rest of the semester, they'll continue to look at that and they'll create posters. And then it finally comes to where they see how we as humans rely on the sun as well. And in that energy, as we eat vegetables and the meats that we eat, we're part of that food chain and food web process within the ecosystem. And so at the end of the year, they end with choosing an ecosystem, and they make an Adobe Spark video where they have to explain everything that's happening inside that ecosystem, how the energy is flowing within that ecosystem, all the different food chains and food webs and everything that is happening within that ecosystem. So by the end of the year, they can really explain how energy is flowing through the ecosystem.
Hi, so for science in middle school, we try to concretize the ideas that have been learned and discovered in elementary. Like for example, the energy that has been mentioned in grades 4 and 5, we actually carry that through many, many different units. There are many more units in science for middle school, but one particular unit that would connect really well is the idea of matter and energy in ecosystems. So here we looked at processes in much more detail. So we try to put in some of the theory behind it. And so what happens is that in addition to all the hands-on and the models that they have built in elementary, we teach them how to explain their ideas in a way that is easily understandable. We teach them also how to use evidence in order to build scientific argumentation. So this is a typical unit in which, so like the first unit, we looked at how energy is converted during photosynthesis, what happens, and then we move on to talk about what happens during cellular respiration and how the carbon moves in your ecosystem. So using the ideas that they have learned in the first 3 chapters, the 4th chapter usually ends in a science seminar in which they use all their ideas that they have come up with and the theories that they have learned and think about how to apply it to answer a question that actually has not been answered in science yet. So it's very similar to the Socratic seminar, except that this time we are looking at evidence. So the kids are given different bits of evidence that have been drawn from various sources. And then they come and discuss a question such as why does deforestation lead to more carbon dioxide in the air? So in middle school science, we are about bridging the gap to high school so that they know how to prepare for high school, the tools that they need in terms of scientific argumentation and explanation in particular.
Thank you so much to Mr. Dizan, Ms. Bandy, and Ms. Tui for that very informative talk. I learned quite a bit, but I particularly liked the theme that seems to go across all the grade levels of discovery, exploration, and that kind of self-learning. It's so, so vital. Very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our guests today, all the teachers. We're so appreciative of you taking the time, not only today, but taking the time to prepare such informative slides and presentations. We do very much appreciate all you do for our kids. We cannot say that enough, how important you are in their holistic development. You're vital to who ICS is. And Mr. Kershner and I and the entire leadership team are so grateful for all of you. I wanted to share with everybody who's joining us a real life example from ICS of just the K-5 through 12th grade, because I believe when Gusty came in, it was just kindergarten. I don't think there was a K-4 way back then. But this is Gustavo Nakashita. We call him Gusty in the high school, and he's graduating this year. He has spent his entire schooling at ICS, right from day 1 of kindergarten all the way to his senior year. Gusty knows no other school but the International Community School in Singapore. Gusty has recently gotten acceptances to quite a few universities and colleges all around the world, but the one that we're most proud of and the one we get the most questions about is from the UK and whether or not an American curriculum school can get kids into a university outside of the United States. Gusty has got an acceptance into Imperial College London. I invite you to look up a little bit about Imperial College London, but the Imperial College London is the 3rd ranked university in the UK and number 7 in the entire world. Gusty doesn't spend a whole lot of time outside at tuitions and places like that. Everything he has, he's developed himself. He is an incredibly intelligent, hardworking young man, but all those skills and all the knowledge and all that sort of stuff, it was something that was developed because of the synergy that exists and has existed here at ICS for quite some time. So I just wanted to share that real life example that we're very proud of and how the synergy in the people, our teachers, our administrative team, our staff, and the curriculum can lead to success post ICS, and Gusty is a perfect example of that. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation, to the teachers. We will now invite Miss Sarah Go to moderate some questions and answer sessions. Miss Go.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, teachers, for sharing. That was so helpful and informative. My name is Sarah Go, and I serve as the Advancement Director here at ICS. So I will be moderating the Q&A session. Feel free to turn on your videos. And thank you in advance for submitting your questions in the chat box below. So let's get right to it. The first question that was sent in, Mr. Kershner, I think this would be for you. How is the school preparing for the ES principal transition for Mr. Samuel Go? And will Mr. K be involved in any training with him?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Go. That's a great question, especially as we think about this idea of synergy, because transitioning from one administrator to another, we want to make sure that that synergy is consistent. And this is very important to me because as I transition out of ICS and leave the elementary school in the very capable hands of Mr. Samuel Go, our new incoming elementary school principal, I want to make sure that that transition happens seamlessly. So what I'm currently in the process of doing is developing what I'm just calling a transition document. So as different things come up that are vital to just the way the elementary school runs, whether it's something that involves curriculum or a certain application, a digital application that the students use, or different resources, whatever the case might be, evaluating teachers and observing teachers and how that process works, a number of different things. The list continues to grow. I'm adding that to this transition document. And as I complete, I don't know that it will ever be completed because I'll continue to add to it, but as it's more formed within the next few weeks, I'll be sending that to Mr. Samuel Go, and I'll have everything linked in the document. So if he needs to reference something, he can just click on that link and the reference will be there. In addition to that, I'll be scheduling periodic video calls with him between now and when I transition out of ICS and back to the US in June. He and his family will be arriving in early July to get settled and to in Singapore, as well as get settled in ICS, and make sure that there's plenty of time for him to adapt and to begin that synergistic collaboration with the admin team here and with the teachers here. So that's what that process will look like as we transition out. So I will provide a tremendous amount of information for Mr. Go, as well as just touching base with him periodically to make sure that I'm answering any questions that he has. I can give him more context around these things on this transition document to make sure that that transition is happening seamlessly.
Thank you, Mr. K. I have a question that has been asked to me. Is Mr. Go my brother? Well, he's my brother in Christ. But as a relative, I have not seen him at any Chinese New Year reunions yet. So no, we are not related. The next question, moving on. Mr. K, this is for you as well. There's really a lot of papers used for homeworks and kids may not even remember what they have worked on. Is there any plans on digitizing it?
So regarding homework, we actually are digitizing this in a sense because all of the assignments and projects, especially for the upper grades, so from grades 3 and up, those are on Schoology, and the students know how to access Schoology to know what their assignments are and what they need to get done. For the younger grades up to grade 2, when there is homework, that goes out via the newsletters, the grade level newsletters that are also available on Schoology, so that parents can keep track of what needs to be done for homework throughout the week. But it is important as well. It is important to note that when it comes to homework, it is that students do need to have, when they do have a homework assignment, still the opportunity to do some pencil paper type activities, especially for the younger students. Developmentally, it's important that they don't have too much homework, just the right amount, but that they have opportunities to do those pencil paper activities, whether that might be writing, whether it might be doing a math homework sheet, so that those skills are not lost, in addition to the digital things that are happening. So we do encourage you to stay up to date by checking Schoology, and encouraging your elementary students, especially the upper elementary students, to check their own Schoology and to develop that sense of responsibility as well, so that they can keep up with their assignments and projects.
Thank you, Mr. K. And do we expect any face-to-face events with parents on campus this year?
Since Mr. K has been answering all the questions, I think I can chime in and shed some light on that. As everybody most likely knows, that on the 16th of February, we had the big announcement from the multi-ministry task force that we're going to be learning to live with the Omicron variant. As a school, we're still looking through a lot of the advisories and information that's been provided to us to see what it is we can and cannot do. And we want to make sure that we do it in the right way. We do it in the most organized, safest way for your children as possible. So we're currently working on ways and the parameters at which we can start opening the campus to our community, so that we can start doing more face-to-face community events. We will be in touch within the next few days, perhaps into next week, as to what that will look like as we gather more information and seek further clarification.
Mr. Harding, there is one more question, but before we do that, I would just like to inform everybody that if for the next year's school calendar is out, and you can find it on our website if you're looking, it's in the parent portal, and all of our platforms is there as well. The last question that we have is, at which grade is the teaching of World War II and 9/11 conducted? Mr. K,
Yeah, maybe Mr. K can talk about that for elementary, but I can say in the middle school, in the middle and high school, there's no specific focus on the event of 9/11. We don't teach that specific event. We do teach about conflict and the interconnectedness of conflicts and sort of revolutions and resolutions and all that sort of stuff around the world, but not specifically 9/11. And in terms of World War II, that is covered as a focus, as a focal point in our high school US history class. And modern world history, if you take AP modern world history, which is an option, of course, you will cover World War II as well. Both are taught from a very conceptual framework, so not necessarily the facts and the figures and the who was right, who was wrong sort of idea, but taught from the perspective of how, the events leading up to the war, how that can teach us how to avoid certain things now, or how it can indicate trends that were going to lead us to conflict, how conflict is connected to the economy, how it's connected to human rights, and then the results and how they shape the world in the 20th and 21st century. But Mr. Kershner, perhaps you could shed some light on the elementary curriculum and whether or not that's taught there.
Thank you, Mr. Harding. No, it's not formally taught either in elementary school. We of course encourage students to, as they're digging into different cultures and societies as part of the social studies curriculum, those questions might come up. And in those cases, the teachers do guide the discussion about those questions in a way that is developmentally appropriate for the age of the student. And we would of course encourage the teachers to, if a question like that comes up, to communicate with parents and say, I just want to let you know that your child did bring this up, and this is how it was discussed. If they have further questions at home, we do invite you to open up that discussion as you see appropriate for your for your values, for your cultural background in your own home, but it's not something that would be formally taught in the elementary school.
Thank you, principals. Now, before I turn the time back to you to close, I would like to remind all of our ICS community that the school is going through the re-enrollment exercise. To reserve your child seat for the next school year, please sign the contract that was sent to your email and pay the $1,500 fee before March 15th. Now, it is a necessary practice for international schools, especially small schools like ICS, to yield an accurate commitment of students returning. And this in turn will help the school operate at a healthy capacity while avoiding detrimental re-enrollment fluctuations, thus maintaining affordable school fees. And that's what we all want, right? So we hope to welcome your children back next year. Please check your emails. Back to you, Mr. Harding and Mr. K.
Thank you so much, Ms. Go, for moderating the Q&A portion. And thank you to our parents and the guardians for attending today's joint principal town hall. It's been really like to get to know many of you. And before we end, we would like to hear from you. We would like to encourage you all actually to participate in our upcoming focus groups here at ICS. This is an amazing opportunity for you to be able to share with us your experiences and to have an impact on the future of the school through our strategic planning process. We invite you to scan the QR code that's on your screen for more information, or the link will also be provided in the chat.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Harding. I just would like to thank everyone again for joining us. A huge thank you to our grade 4 and 5 homeroom teachers and our middle school English, math, and science teachers. That was a fantastic talk. Hopefully that was very helpful for you as parents to have a better context and a clearer picture of what that synergy across grade levels and divisions looks like. And thank you so much to our parents for joining us today. Just want to remind you that the recording of the conversation will be available on the parent portal. If you would like to contact us with any other questions that you might have, our emails are provided here, so please don't hesitate to contact us. And meanwhile, until our next online event, and hopefully soon it will be face-to-face. We'll, as Mr. Harding said, continue to wait a guidance from the government on that, but we hope that we will be able to see you face-to-face soon. But we do have some other online events planned for the future, so we look forward to seeing you at those. And until then, we also just, of course, look forward to each and every day serving your children with love and with care and with excellence. And with that, I will wish you a fantastic day. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye.